So welcome everybody, and thank you for being here today. It's another episode of Enrich Your Coffee, season number 3. Not sure, but anyways, we have a guest here, a dear guest. I think it was long expected to host Knowledge Transfer Ireland in this series of events. Siobhan Horan is a program manager at Knowledge Transfer Ireland. This is an agency in Ireland, in fact, and I think they are a stellar example of how to bridge the gap between the research outputs that the research community produces and the environment that produces innovation, so to speak. And I think Siobhan will illustrate to us a bit of how technology Knowledge Transfer Ireland works, and we'll have the opportunity at the end to make some questions if we have any. So without further ado, and welcoming everybody that is joining at the moment, and asking to smile for the camera so the medicine can take a picture.
Perfect. Thank you. You got it, Chiara?
Yeah, so 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much.
Over your coffee mugs, very good. I forgot mine, though I use it all the time. And so I would let Siobhan introduce herself, and then I would just leave her go into her presentation, and then we have some questions for her. Thank you, Siobhan. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Ilaria, and thanks for inviting me here to talk to you about Knowledge Transfer Ireland. So I'm just sharing my presentation, which is always the trickiest part, is making sure the technical side works. So hopefully you can see that. So yeah, my name is Siobhan Horan. I'm Industry Engagement Manager at Knowledge Transfer Ireland. So I've been in KTI for about 4 years, and before focusing on industry engagement, I was managing the funding programme into the technology transfer offices in Ireland on behalf of KTI. So this presentation really is about our role in connecting business and the research system in Ireland. I'll say a few words about what Knowledge Transfer Ireland is. As Ilaria just said, we are a central office in Ireland, and we oversee the technology transfer system. So we're hosted within Enterprise Ireland, which is the innovation agency of the Irish government. But we also are part funded by the Irish Universities Association, and we work with any agency in Ireland that has a role to play in R&D. So our mission really is to connect up business and the research sector to bring transparency to the system, to make sure that if you're a business that's wanting to engage with the university in Dublin, the procedure and the steps involved are similar to engaging with a university in the west of Ireland. And we also want to bring transparency as well to the knowledge transfer system. So we publish any outputs that are resulting from commercialization with the research system, and really championing the work that's going on. And that's a really important part of our role. So I'm just going to show you where KTI kind of sits within the ecosystem in Ireland. We've put ourselves bang in the centre. We report into Enterprise Ireland, which is an agency of the government. So we have a dotted line reporting into the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment. We work very closely with business, the research system and investors. And we really work very closely with anyone that has a role to play in innovation in Ireland, whether that's chambers of commerce, industry association, research funders, and then any of the research infrastructure throughout any of the state agencies. So KTI really does take that central role. There's a lot of different supports available in Ireland to help companies to engage with the research sector, and it can often be confusing to know who do you go to for a certain research project. So KTI is kind of taking that role to help people to signpost them to the most relevant support. So I just wanted to say a few words as well about knowledge transfer in Ireland and research commercialization. So it is a relatively young system. Prior to 2000, knowledge transfer was happening, but it was happening in a very ad hoc basis. So it was mainly carried out by the larger universities, and it was something that it probably wasn't very widespread. So this really kind of gathered steam with the introduction of Science Foundation Ireland back in 2000, and then the government strategy for science, technology and innovation. The first major funding into the technology transfer system was the Technology Transfer Strengthening Initiative, which is now managed by KTI, and that's an Enterprise Ireland funding. So that was funding into the technology transfer offices to help with their operations and staffing. And it really ensured that there was professionals in place in the offices throughout the universities and institutes of technology that were well trained and were there to engage with industry. So since then, we're on our third iteration of the funding programme now, TTSI3. And also just wanted to point out that I guess two key instances in this map are the introduction of Knowledge Transfer Ireland in 2014 to really oversee the system and make sure that it's in line with international best practice. And also, I've listed in 2012, we brought in the National IP Protocol, which is Ireland's national policy for research commercialisation. So that's a really important document, and KTI manages that on behalf of the government. So we ensure that that's regularly updated. And that's a really key policy for us because it sets out the framework for engaging with the research sector. And it's something that's been cited time and time again. It's something that's really key to helping business understand the requirements of the research sector and the research sector to understand the requirements of business. So that was updated as recently as 2019, where we included a chapter on state aid regulations and conflict of interest management within the institutions. So I've mentioned the TTSI programme, which is the main funding into the knowledge transfer offices. So that funding programme currently runs until the end of 2021. We've actually extended it by an additional year. The original 5-year programme was 34.5 million over the 5 years. And the way that we've structured that in Ireland is that we, our role is to encourage collaboration between business and the research system, but we also want to encourage collaboration between the technology transfer offices. So we encourage, and it's mandatory under this funding programme, that they apply as consortia. So you'll have one of the larger universities typically working with some of the smaller institutions. And this is a way of sharing knowledge and expertise in commercialisation expertise amongst the different institutions. So it's really a way that the smaller institutes can benefit from the larger offices in the universities. And it's working really, really well. We've just carried out a midterm review of the programme, and we've implemented some improvements as well to help some of the smaller institutes catch up with the work that's happening in the larger universities, and also help the larger universities to develop on their offerings as well. And through this programme, we have 40 recognised technology transfer practitioners in Ireland as well. So they have to apply for that internationally recognised standard. So as I mentioned, we publish the outputs from the knowledge transfer system in Ireland as well. I've listed some of the outputs from 2020. So we publish this once a year. These are the typical indicators that we report on to the Irish government. And you'll see that you know, there was a lot of increase in collaboration in Ireland. So we had you know, an increase in R&D engagements that's standing at 3,681 in 2020. So that was up about 40% on the year before. So we track this, and we've got good records of what's actually happening in the system for the last number of years. Some of the numbers that are really important to us are spin-out companies developed from the research base. That's something that's of real interest to the government here. And we also like to track jobs in active spin-outs. There's a real movement from just calculating metrics on a quarterly basis and annual basis to moving towards more qualitative measures like the jobs in active spin-outs. So I've mentioned that we have the National IP Protocol, which is our national policy for research commercialisation. And that really is, it's a living document. It's been updated quite a number of times. And it really does set out the framework for engaging with the research system. We get a lot of questions from companies about IP ownership as a result of collaborative research. So I've just included one of the graphics that we have in that policy, which really sets out in very simple terms the types of IP that you may be entitled to as a result of collaborative innovation. So if you're putting 100% of the funding into collaborative research with the university, you are typically entitled to the right to IP assignment, and the rights to the IP diminish as your industry contribution decrease. So it really sets out in very definite terms, you know, what you can expect, and it really is designed to help to make the negotiations between the research base and industry that little bit clearer. So I'm just going to go through some of the supports that we have available through the KTI website, because we really are trying to simplify the system, because there is a lot going on in Ireland, and we know that from an industry perspective, it's very hard to know where to go for the right support. So we have a lot of facilities available to find the right research partner, to find the right research skills, to provide a map of what's happening in Ireland in terms of research infrastructure. And also we have a list of current licensing opportunities from the research base. So one of the main facilities that we offer to industry is a lot of practical guidance. So we have a suite of practical guides covering everything from confidentiality agreements to material transfer to how to form a spin-out. And that is something that we're currently updating. We're adding in some guidance on trade secrets. We've recently added in some guidance on state aid. And we also have model agreements as well. So you would have a model template for an exclusive license agreement that you can download from the KTI website. And these model agreements are in use across the vast majority of the Irish universities and institutes of technology. They're not mandatory, but they have been widely adopted. They may be tailored a little bit to suit the institution, but the clauses included are standard clauses that have been taken from the KTI agreements. We also have been working quite closely with the Irish government departments and bringing together this national directory for RDNI supports. So that pulls together any of the research funding offered by any of the government departments. It also outlines, you know, how to access facilities and equipment throughout the Irish universities. Also looking at, you know, some of the Horizon Europe opportunities that are available to Irish companies, and also just clearly outlining the different research centres, technology centres in Ireland, what their role is, what their expertise is, and who are the relevant contact points. So that's been a project that was quite a big one to pull together, but it's really useful for industry as well. And then also we have a search facility to find the right research expertise. So this is really useful for companies that may not have an existing relationship with the university and want to find the right academic that has the niche skills that they may need to bring forward their research project, or also people that are working with the university that may not be aware of all the research expertise that's available. So through this facility, you can type in your search terms. So it can be anything from machine learning, and it will pull up a list of any of the academics in Ireland that are publishing under this topic, and it will give you their contact details as well, so that you can get in touch to discuss the potential for working with them. And we also, another popular facility that we have available through the website is our RDNI funding search. So this pulls together everything that you would have seen in our RDNI guide, everything from across the state supports from any of the government agencies, and also a lot of the European funding. And it helps companies to input the stage of development that they're at, whether they're an SME, whether they're a multinational, what type of research project they want to carry out, whether that's a consultancy agreement, whether it's a larger research project that they want to carry. And it gives them a filtered list of the types of supports that may be available to them. So that's a really good way of navigating the types of supports that may be eligible to their business. So that was kind of it for me. I'm hoping that I kept that to the 10 minutes. They're my contact details. So I'm going to pass back to Ilaria now and open the floor to any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Siobhan. That was super interesting. I think we've just scratched the surface with this presentation. I had the pleasure to talk to your director, Alison Campbell, some time ago preparing for this event. And so I did have the opportunity to actually dig in a bit more, dig deeper. And so I'll try to if unless there are other questions. I always skip the queue, unfortunately. So please raise your hands, but I can't wait to ask a few questions. And one is, it's my privilege, I'm hosting. One is about the search functions. And so how do you get all this information? And then, since I know there's going to be a queue of other questions, but then I would like to know some other things. Okay, I'll let some people put their questions and then I'll come in again if there is time.
I don't know if you can see, but Sonia has a question.
Sonia has her raised hand. Do we want to let Siobhan answer my question, or do we want to ask her all the questions and get her head full? let her answer my question and then we go to Sonia, if this is okay. Okay.
Perfect. So your question, Ilaria, was around the search functionality.
Yeah. How do you get all this data? I mean, do people volunteer this information? Do you ask them? Do you pass, did you just chase them around to have this information, or?
Yeah, so it's a bit of both, really. So we have a listing on our website of current licensing opportunities. So they would be sent in to us by the technology transfer offices. So we do go out to them on a quarterly basis and we ask them if there's anything that they want to list on our website. When it comes to listing funding, that's also kind of done manually by ourselves. So we would contact the government departments and government agencies and ask them for any updates so that we can update our funding tool. So at the moment, it's quite a manual task. And that's something that we are looking to update next year. And we have our research expertise, which pulls in data from any of the institutional repositories. So that's how that's done. To be listed as an expert in our search, you have to have your publications included in your institutional repository. So that's kind of included there as a quality measure. Now we are looking at updating our search functionality for next year, because at the moment you have to go to a different tool to input your funding requirements. You might have to look for research expertise. You may also be looking for a license opportunity. So you have to search for them separately. So we're looking at creating a central search function that will input data from all those sources. And it will also utilize machine learning technologies, natural language processing to make the search that little bit more intuitive. So that's going to be a big project that we're working on at the moment, and we're hoping to go out and procure a supplier that can operate that search platform for us for next year. And it will also hopefully, automate pulling in new funding opportunities and take away some of the manual element from that. It will also hopefully pull in data on patenting, data on people that have been awarded research funding, and that will really enhance the expertise search. At the moment it is publications, but we really want to bring in these other sources so that it really includes a lot of academics that wouldn't typically be publishing their research. So it's a big project at the moment. I'm glad you asked that question because it's something that I've been working quite a lot on.
Okay, no, that sounds really, really interesting. So maybe I can give the floor to Sonia, who has a question for you.
Yes, thank you, Siobhan. Actually, my question kind of follows on very neatly from the last one, because while you were talking, I very quickly went onto your website and I thought, okay, this looks really first glance a bit like Google Scholar in the sense that I look for a physicist, and so I was intrigued, and I think this is what your new generation of search is going to do. How do I know? Sometimes I don't know I'm looking for a physicist, right? Mm-hmm. I may be looking for an economist, but I don't know, because this is the innovation very often happens when you're moving one thing to new territory, right? So how will your new search engine deal with that?
Yeah, so our new search engine will pull in data from multiple sources, and also, employing the natural language processing as well is going to be key for the the search function, because at the moment, I think the categories, I can bring up my presentation again to show you that screenshot of what it looks like. Because we've realized that a lot of the, so I mean, you know, if you're looking for urban planning, that's a little bit different from architecture. So we've realized that a lot of these categories are quite outdated. So the new search functionality should get us away from this. So it will be pulling in a lot of different sources and really enriching the data sources that we have as well. We're also kind of conscious that we want to link in with ORCID as well to track movements of academics, because you know, this pulls in anyone that's published that's linked to an Irish university, but we're kind of aware that you know, academics move around, and we want to track the publications as they move as well and ensure that they are listed at the right university. So it's going to be very challenging to whoever is the supplier that is going to create the search functionality for us. But you know, we're giving them a lot of very interesting tasks, but we have identified some potential solutions, hopefully, to get us around those challenges.
And do you want to continue to elaborate, unless somebody has a pressing question?
I put my hand up again because I have another question, but I would like other people to have a chance.
Because then there is me at the end of the queue. If nobody has a question and your topic is different, I'll ask mine. Okay, so I was wondering about data. And because you talked about publications and patents and so on, but raw data, or raw not coming out of an instrument, but data of different natures, is this kind of information something that you would put up on as something that could enrich especially the business environment?
Do you mean the data that we collect from the technology transfer offices?
Data, research data on anything like an experiment or a sampling of the environment, or I don't know, a machine that's learning to do something. Data that could help the business sector validate some results, for example. Is this something that you would use, or that you plan to use? That could be part of your ecosystem?
So what we're planning to do is we've got a suite of case studies of successful collaborations between business and the research system. So we'll be pulling those in. So it gives businesses examples of successful collaborations that have happened, and ideas as well of different ways that you can work with the research system. You know, in Ireland, academic consultancy wouldn't be something that's very widely done at the moment. So we're trying to publicize the benefits of engaging with research institutions for the basis of consultancy. We also have a list of the spin-out companies from the Irish research base. So you can see, I think it was 30 spin-outs that were generated in 2020. And it's typically around 30 a year that we generate. And a lot of those spin-outs are, you know, high potential companies that are very research intensive. So we'll be pulling those into the search as well, that there's potential partners for any, you know, established companies that want to engage. And we also want to promote them as well, because, you know, they are companies that we see a lot of potential in. So we will be listing those and pulling those in. And so we will be developing the search functionality that way to try and give an indication of how businesses can work with the research base. We would like as well, ideally, to pull in any listings of facilities and equipment available throughout the research system into the search functionality. So if you are searching for, you know, something to carry out testing for a research project, that we would intend that the search functionality should be able to pull that up.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And Jan Visser, you have your hand up.
I have a question. I see that you have both institutes and universities involved. In the Netherlands, it's all separate. So how did you get everybody on board with this one umbrella? And do you work with business incubators that may or may not be linked to research institutes or universities?
Yes, so Knowledge Transfer Ireland is it's hosted within Enterprise Ireland, but we also get some funding from the Irish Universities Association. So that does give us, you know, it kind of gives us some sort of an authority to work very closely with the all the Irish universities. So it gives us some influence over the commercialisation agenda in these institutions. And then we work very closely with the Umbrella Association for the Institutes of Technology in Ireland. So we work very closely with them and the Irish Universities Association. In Ireland, we have the movement towards the creation of technological universities. So a lot of our institutes of technology are merging into technological universities. So we're working very closely with this sector to understand their needs from a commercialization point of view and the types of resourcing that they will need as they come together in groupings. So any of the publicly funded research organisations in Ireland would be tied into the Technology Transfer Strengthening Initiative. And they would receive some sort of support from KTI in that regard.
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah.
We would be kind of tied in with the business incubators, but usually they're affiliated with one of the universities or the IoT. So that's the way that we would engage with them.
Okay, good. So yeah, here in Holland, we also have some independent business incubators linked more to industrial campuses where there are no universities or research institutes. So they're different breed, but they have a lot of knowledge how to do things. So it would be nice to get them involved as well. Okay, thank you.
Very much. And Jimmy Anderson from ESS.
I think Sonia was before me.
Sonia is queuing, but if you want to be such a good knight and let her put her question.
Of course I am. That's about the only good thing
Sonia,
about me.
please.
So Sonia is already.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jimmy. In the last 3 minutes then. Siobhan, I was really excited to hear that you want to increase the diversity of the expertise. So you're not just saying it's a person with a professorship with 200 peer-reviewed articles. So I was wondering, if you increase diversity of expertise, how do you do quality control?
Yeah, I mean, that's really challenging. At the moment, you have to have your you will have to have your publications listed in the institutional repositories. And we always get calls from institutions, from researchers asking us if they can, change the details on our search platform. And we've stayed away from that because we want to ensure that we are working very closely with the institutes and encouraging them to log any publications in their institutional repositories. And also that's a method of quality control for us, that they can't just list themselves as experts in a number of different fields without having the documentation to back that up. Also, with the patents, anything that we pull in will have to be already listed in certain databases. We're hoping as well to pull in data from the other government agencies. So we'll have to come up with some sort of data sharing agreements for that as well. So that's, we'll pull the academic experience from those publicly available sites that are kind of hosted on the other government websites. So any of the information we'll pull in will be publicly available, but they will be quality sources that we can vouch for to ensure that we are listing the right academic expertise.
Fabulous. Jimmy, your turn.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for a very nice presentation, very interesting. Having 13 member countries at ESS, I actually thought about scalability on this right away, because obviously you could replicate yourself in different countries, and you could have different anchoring points, and you could make a cluster structure, and and suddenly the moon and Mars and all the rest of it will be inherited. Have you any thoughts on that, on how to move forward from where you are today?
Well, I suppose you know, for us in Ireland, we're constantly trying to evolve the system. The funding for the Ttsi program has been in place since 2007, and it has been evolving over funding rounds. You know, at the start, it was really, you know, funding basic day-to-day operations of the Technology Transfer Office. But as we've moved forward, you know, the focus has it started to shift more towards industry engagement. So as we design the next round of the funding program, we will be putting more of an emphasis on industry engagement activities, business development, you know, promoting the research expertise and knowledge transfer opportunities available within the institutes, potentially even looking at spin-out development within spin-out development managers within the institutions. But we're also mindful that each institute has different requirements. So we have some of the larger universities that have big teams in place for knowledge transfer, whereas there are still some of the smaller institutes where you may have one person that has part of their time dedicated to knowledge transfer. So we want to ensure that our supports vary by the needs of the institute. So that's something that we are looking at developing upon. We have done some pilots as well to look at different areas that we can expand into. So I mentioned academic consultancy. That was something that, you know, is carried out quite a lot in other European countries, but hadn't really been done in Ireland. So we'd set up a pilot program to establish managed consultancy offices in some of the Irish institutes. So, you know, I've been over to Amsterdam to look at how things are structured in the Netherlands. So we've been constantly looking at international best practice in that regard. We've also, after our midterm review of the funding program, we took on board, we brought in international evaluation panel, and we took on board the feedback that they had. And we also allowed our institutes a certain amount of funding to respond to some of the challenges posed, you know, by the panel. So we gave them flexibility to come up with the initiatives that they wanted to carry out. So it wasn't just KTI telling them these are the activities you need to carry out. And that was really interesting. We've gotten everything from, you know, setting up systems to license out technology, to people wanting to set up events to attract international investors into Ireland to showcase the research coming out of their institutes. So that's something that we are keen to encourage as well, to get the institutes to shape the agenda that they need. We've also been running pilots as well to allow the institutes access to a pot of funding for very early stage commercialization funding. So that's something that we are tracking as well at the moment. So we are constantly trying to develop the system, and we've got lots of plans ahead for the coming years. But we kind of do this as well by looking at international best practice and seeing what would best suit the Irish system. I think anyone that does that, you know, you have to make sure that it's tailored for your own country. Ireland has the benefit of being quite a small country. We've only got 8 universities. We've got a limited number of, I think we'll eventually end up with 5 technological universities. So we are always quite small, and we do have a very good culture of collaboration as well, where the universities have established links. So that really is a benefit. You can't do too much in Ireland without people knowing about it. So, you know, we have a benefit of working together.
Fabulous. So with this, I guess our time is over, is it, Medicine? I guess. So, yeah, she's nodding. So yeah. I would like to thank everybody for coming here together. And of course, to thank Siobhan and Horan for being with us and telling us about Knowledge Transfer Ireland. I believe we will stay connected and continue to learn from your experience, and hope to see you in our events and then exchange with us in time. So thank you, everybody. And have I said everything? Do I have to give some messages or no?
No,
just see
no, we're all good.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.